Welcome back to the channel. I decided to try to mix some tracks in Fairlight because I haven't seen any videos of anyone mixing inside Resolve. So let me go over how I set up all these tracks and a brief overview of plugins, and I will link these down below so you guys can mix this as well. So I brought in all the tracks. We basically have overhead, left and right, kick, couple of bass tracks, an organ, piano. We have an acoustic and electric guitar, mandolin and a violin, and a few tracks of lead vocal and backups. Now what I like to do is route stuff into pairs. A lot of people just mix it as is. It's just something that I do. And how I do that is go to the Fairlight menu at the top here and choose bus format. And here we have all of our buses. Now you'll be used to seeing bus number 1. It's just a 2-channel stereo bus. So I went ahead and added some categories here. I made one for drums, instruments, background vocals, reverb, dark reverb, and compressor. So I'll walk through all these and how I use them with the routing as we work our way through the mix here. At the bottom of all your tracks here, where you normally see bus 1, you can actually change your bus outputs. So that means for the drums, for instance, all 3 of these are going to go over to the drum bus here and then out to the main 2-channel. So that way you can control all your tracks on an individual fader and do some global adjustments. As you can see here, I have a reverb, a little bit of a compression, and some EQ going on the main drum mix. And then on the individual channels here, I just have some EQ on the overheads and a little bit of cut and boost on the kick track. And if we solo this, because the buses don't have actual solos, it'll just pass through to the bus without having to mess with the buses. So if we play now, you can hear just the drums. And this is actually prior to any of the spatial effects. This is another reason why I like to set the routing up this way, so you have complete control over how much effect is on something versus the dry signal. So to run through the rest of the routing, I have the drums routed to a drums bus. Anything else, bass, piano, guitars, all that's routed to the instruments. And then we have the vocals all separated. So once you get to this initial balance, you can see I've got some different fader levels here. Most of these don't have EQ or dynamics. And the only thing that has a separate effect send is the violin. I added some reverb to that. And then once we get into the vocals, that's where some more of the plugins come in. So we have an individual channel strip here called the Analog Obsession. I really like this. It's kind of like an SSL plugin. You get a mic pre, you get a de-esser, tape saturation, some EQ, a limiter, and a compressor. So this one I got a little bit of a compression going on, but only 0.2 of makeup gain. Mainly it's just to control the dynamics. And then I did some cutting and boosting in the EQ section, and we have a couple dB of tape drive. So this is on the lead vocal track prior to it leaving to the bus. This is one of the more important things when you're mixing a song. Obviously, it's the lead vocal. So you want to get that controlled and sounding good before it hits the rest of the mix. And then I have next in line the retro equalizer from a company called Plug & Mix. This is a company I found a long time ago. They still exist. They make some pretty nice plugins, and I got a handful of them. And I really like this EQ. And I'll show you the example of that in a minute. And then we have, of course, the stock compressor. This one doesn't even have any makeup gain. Once again, it's just doing some dynamic controls. And then I have an EQ to roll off a little bit of low and give it some presence around 7K. This track actually has a lot of bleed on it. If we solo it out, you can hear a lot of other instruments going on. Show my head. Let me mute all these effects here, the compressor and the reverbs. Yeah, no, it's only said. It's a feeling about half past there. It's kind of quiet, but you can hear drums and some mandolin going. But I decided not to clean that up. You could have used the track-wide dialogue isolator, but it's part of the track, so I left it. And then after that, I have this going to this compressor send. Now, this is what I was talking about on the other video where a lot of music producers will have the dry vocal and then a super extreme compressed version right next to it. And you can kind of tuck that in underneath. So I have this on a separate send. If we turn off the send here and I'll unmute the compressor, let's listen to this vocal as it sits. And then I will turn the send on and you can hear the presence jump because of the compressor.
Even about half past there. I just need some place where I can lay my head.
So you can hear a lot more body comes in, and that is just this compressor over here. It's driven quite a bit. Not a lot of output gain, but quite a bit of compression going on. And this is just the plug-in mix electro-optical version. But if we watch the meter here,
well, Mister, can you tell?
We're getting about 5 dB of gain reduction on that, but that's strictly for that effect. And then this send here is what I use to control the amount hitting that compressor. Now, these reverb, we got background vocal and vocals, both have reverb and dark reverb on them. I made a separate bus for each. This is the stock DaVinci Reverb. I just adjusted it to taste. And then on the one labeled dark, if we look at the graph here, you could see there's a lot less decay going on. And although the box is bigger, you can see I've rolled off a lot of the high gain here, a lot of the high frequency of the early reflections. I'll show you what those sound like in a minute. They're just two slightly different sounding reverbs, and I think I have more of the backup vocal going to the dark one. We'll just show you that when we get to that. And of course, the violin and a little bit of the drums. So I'll mute the reverb for now, and we'll show you what this thing sounds like with the reverbs on and off.
Where I can lay my head. Well, Mister, can you tell me? Well,
so you can hear it adds a pretty good amount of dimension there. And before I forget, I just want to go over what's going on the 2-channel master bus here. Once again, I'm using this Analog Obsession. It's got a little bit of compression going on, but hardly any makeup gain. I got 1 dB. It's just kind of glue everything together. And I do have a little bit of EQ going on, a few dB, just to clear up some of the noisy frequencies. And then what I haven't shown you guys is a multiband compressor. And this is kind of like having 3 compressors in one, or 4 in this case if we were to use them all. And what that does is work on a frequency range, and you can separately adjust the compression on each of these. Right now I only have 2, and I'll solo these out so you can kind of hear what they're doing in the mix. So if we take band 3 here, this is doing the lion's share. You could see the roll off on the curves here. If we hit play,
might find a bear. He just grinned and shook my head.
so you can hear when the vocals are on, and like every syllable, it's clamping down on that. So that's helping everything kind of balance together. And then I'll show you the lower end here on band 2. Not as much compression going on there, but it's definitely helping to tighten things up. And that's the multiband compressor. I haven't shown you guys that until now. These don't even have makeup gain on it. They're pretty much just lowering the signal just to control it a little bit. So now let's show you the reverb sends and this compressor. So for the reverb, same thing on the bus sends. I've just chosen whatever I wanted to have sent to a reverb and dialed it in. This violin, for instance, I thought sounded really great with the reverb on it. So if we solo that and shut off the reverb, let's find the violin section here. It's going quite often, but there's a really nice solo. You can see when you cycle the reverb on and off, it just adds a really nice spatial quality to it. So like I said, nothing else going on that track. It just sounded really good all by itself. Didn't have to do any doctoring up on that. So that's going to the reverb, and then so are these vocals. Let's go ahead and mute the reverbs, and we'll solo the vocals just to show you what they sound like through the reverbs.
He said, I will fix your rag.
I'll shut this compressor off too. That's really where you can hear the bleed is from the compressor bringing up the level.
Easy Chester, follow me and call me in.
So here's completely just dry with only these inline effects going.
If you take Jack, my dog,
And I'll add the first reverb.
call me in the fall. He said, I will fix your rag if you take Jack, my dog.
All right, one more thing that I think's cool. This is more of a post-production kind of workflow is how I think they designed this. Right next to our monitor section here, you can actually choose which bus you want to listen to. And I think that was for doing stems. So if you had music only, dialogue only, that kind of thing, you could just do an output based on the bus. But since we routed everything this way, you can actually isolate everything without soloing them out. So if we just want to hear the main reverb, I'll switch that to reverb and we'll hit play. So now you can hear just that lead vocal and the violin in there. And if we switch to the dark reverb, so if you're really wanting to dial in what your settings sound like, you can actually solo them out in real time. And here's the compressor by itself.
I gotta go, but my friends can't stick around.
And as I said, because we're soloing the bus, that's before this compressor gets sent to the reverb. So you're actually just hearing the compressed signal by itself. And then, of course, bus run is our main 2 channels output.
Take a road off.
So once you've balanced everything out, kind of like we've done here, and you can see all these fader adjustments, if you wanted to, you could actually hide all the tracks except your buses and mix the rest of the song like this with automation. And this is pretty much everything stripped down into each category where you have control over these bus faders as a group and your spatial and effects here. So you could do that if you like. That's another option. You can still pan all your buses here at the end, as well as add additional dynamics in EQ. As you can see, some of these don't have any, like the reverb, and looks like I rolled off some lows on the compressor because I think it was just getting a little muddy sounding. So I rolled off the low end there. And that's pretty much the entire thing. I will leave a link to these tracks down below if you guys want to pull them in and try it out. It wasn't a bad experience. I probably do like Pro Tools a little bit better just because that's what I'm more comfortable on, although I haven't used it in a while. I was able to pretty much do everything I wanted to do in here, and I do like that busing feature where you can just listen to that on your main output, so for what it's worth. All right, thanks for watching. Leave a comment down below if you guys have some kind of topic you want me to take a stab at, and I'll take a look and make a video on that. And subscribe if you haven't. I love seeing my subscriber count go up, and it really helps me out. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one.